Recording now. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Guerin and our topic of tank versus tankless.
All right, my name is Mike, like Ryan said. I've been doing this stuff since 1978. I've been involved with pretty much every water heater manufacturer out there over the course of all that time. I've dealt with A.O. Smith, I've dealt with Rheem, and deal with the Bradford stuff now, with being part of Temperature Equipment Corporation. But it always comes up. You know, what are we going to do as far as tank versus tankless? It's always a big argument. Guys like the tank, guys like the tankless. But bottom line is, it's all about setting the expectations with your customers. I realize that in the case of a lot of our plumbing guys, and I've talked to them, many of them, for over years and years and years, the typical hot water phone call comes in with mom being in a panic because her water heater's leaking all over her basement. And you really don't even get a chance to have a salesperson talk to them. The tankless conversation is something that is a lot easier to get into, and we can compare and contrast some of the stuff that's going on. So right now you're seeing in the market, the tankless companies are actually trying to make it a little bit easier for us by putting stuff like little 1, 2, 3 gallon storage tanks inside their tankless water heaters and creating a little circulation circuit in there. But we're also seeing the tank companies get out there with the newer controls and accessories that can actually change the way a tank water heater operates and tries to save you some money. One thing I always tell everybody is that get used to using company websites. Whether it's Bradford, whether it's A.O. Smith, whether it's Rheem, whether it's Bosch, whether it's Navient, whatever company you are dealing with, we hope Bradford and Bosch, but whatever company you're used to dealing with, the more you use their websites, the easier and faster it is to do a lot of these things. The two that we're going to be, well, the one that we're going to be looking at later on is going to be the Bradford right sizing one. So that's going to be one that, you know, it's very, very easy to navigate. They also have a tendency, like most manufacturers, want to cover their butts, so they're gonna lean on it a little bit. But first thing, let's talk about tankless water heaters. They all pretty much do the same thing. Tankless water heaters are, it seems like the new fad in the United States, but they've been around over in Europe for years. Typically a lot smaller units than what we end up having to have here. They talk about how you're going to save on your energy bills. You're going to enjoy an endless supply of hot water. All right, these claims are really nice, but there are disadvantages to tankless water heaters when you compare them with traditional tank type water heaters on the market. The thing you got to remember is, until your customers start doing a little bit of web searching themselves, the only thing they've seen is like home improvement shows, where the guy on the left-hand side over there that you will probably all recognize sits there and talks about how he's not going to put in that old 50-gallon type water heater. He's going to put in a tankless. Or the one I really love is, you see it a couple times a year, usually around the holidays. I don't even remember who the manufacturer is, but they say something basically like, the O'Leary family of 7 took 20-minute back-to-back showers and never ran out of hot water. What they don't mention during that commercial is, during the 2 hours and 10 minutes that those showers were running, they were burning probably about 200,000 BTU. They leave that little point out. So there's really no magic to any kind of tankless water heater, or any water heater at all. Physics are physics. We burn gas, we heat water. The difference is that in a tankless, we're not going to sit there and store the water. So we have a energy savings by fact that we're only going to heat when we're needed. The water, so the hot water tap's turned on in the home, cold water's drawn through the heater, some sort of flow sensor, usually at about a half a gallon a minute, turns on, and we start heating up the heat exchanger, which in turn starts heating the water. No different than anything else that requires heat and water. So now we're going to vent out. Most of the newer heaters, you're starting to see fewer and fewer non-condensing water heaters on the market. The market is definitely going towards a condensing type water heater, just like condensing boilers are becoming more and more the norm. So we're going to have a sealed combustion chamber. We're going to have dedicated sealed vent piping, typically going to just be PVC. And so we're going to be able to achieve greater efficiencies than a standard tank type heater by the fact that we're only going to be heating it when it's needed.
Just to be clear, Mike, the condensing water heaters you're talking about, you can have a condensing tankless or non-condensing tankless, and a condensing tank and a non-condensing tank.
Right. Tankless technology is leaning more towards the condensing models and farther away. There still are a lot of areas. I don't know where all our audience is from, but when you get down south, you do see a lot of non-condensing tankless water heaters because they're dealing with a lot warmer incoming water temperatures. As far as the big savings is concerned, typically, when we're talking Energy Star tankless, $80 a year. You're around $80 a year, more if you've got a larger family, but you start looking at $1,700 over the life of the water heater, because most of the tankless manufacturers want to talk about how long their tankless also lasts. So we can get continuous hot water out of tankless water heaters, providing we have a continuous flow of water. And you're not going to, mom, who's the last one in the shower, is not going to, be frozen out. She's going to have hot water too. This is the first one, and I put the little note in so I remember. This is the only thing I really agree about tankless water heaters. They do take up less space. So unfortunately, if you think about your typical basement, your typical utility room, you got your furnace down there, your water heater's sitting next to the furnace anyhow. So how much usable space are you really going to start stuffing a bunch of stuff in the basement next to your furnace? Probably not. But it is space saving. You can get get a few square feet of floor space if that really concerns about is a concern. Tankless water heaters, most of the manufacturers claim they have a life of 20 years. That's if they're maintained on a yearly basis. I'll tell you right now, if you maintain a tank water heater like you do a tankless water heater and get rid of the sediment buildup in the bottom of a tank water heater, you can get a lot of years out of a tank water heater also. So now we're talking about at least yearly maintenance, where you're going to have to sit there and shut down the system. You're going to have to flush the system to get any scale buildup and stuff like that. One of the things I disagree with about this slide is down at the bottom where it says, tankless models, the risk of tank leaks and water damage are a thing of the past. No, anything that's got water in it can leak. Anything that's got water in it can cause water damage. So we'll talk about that, something like that, a little bit later. All right, so all of this sounds absolutely great, and that's what most of the tankless water heater manufacturers are counting on. Now let's kind of take a look at some of the stuff that can go wrong, especially if you're not paying attention. So what are the customer's real expectations? They think they want endless hot water. If you talk to them and they've got a tank water heater in there, have they been running out of hot water? Are they really, really, truly complaining about running out of hot water? And if so, is it something that's just started happening in the past year, 2 years? Has it been since day one? You got to play, you got to put your little Sherlock Holmes hat on and play detective a little bit. If they just start complaining within the past year or so and they've got an older tank type water heater, it's probably a sediment problem in the bottom of the tank. My joke that I tell guys all the time is, you get a couple inches of sediment in the bottom of a tank, it's like trying to heat a bucket of water on the other side of a brick wall with a blowtorch. You got to know what they're actually dealing with. So detective time, how many people are in the house? How many bathrooms do they have? Do they expect to be able to do more than one thing at a time? What faucets and shower heads? And this is where you make a 5-gallon bucket your favorite, your favorite tool. Do they have dishwasher? Do they have washer and dryer? How many gallons a minute are we really going to have to supply? Because it starts adding up quick. So now you got to sit there and you got to look at the job. You're going to have to probably select a new location for the water heater. You're going to, most of the cases, want to try and get it over closer to an outside wall. So that means you're going to be moving water piping. you're going to have to run at least, and the reason I say least, a dedicated 3/4 inch gas line. Some of these newer models that are coming out are using negative pressure gas valves so they can get by with a 1/2 inch. But the reason I say least is it's just like with any other gas appliance, the length of the run from the meter to the appliance is going to determine what you're going to have, but you're going to have at least a 3/4 inch. No more 3/4 inch line coming over, dropping down, 1/2 inch going to the water heater, 1/2 inch going to the furnace. We're talking about a dedicated 3/4 inch gas line just for the water heater. Does the meter have the capacity? That's something that a lot of people don't think about. Here in Chicago area, we're talking typically with our 40-degree incoming water, most water heaters are going to be 199,000 BTU, or you may end up with multiple heaters. Is the gas meter going to have the capacity? Typically, like a Chicago bungalow, I think most of the gas meters are only rated for about 285,000 BTU. So if we've got a 200,000 BTU water heater in there and 125 or 150,000 BTU furnace, we're going to run out of gas. So do we have to get the gas company involved and get the meter changed? And chances are the venting materials are going to be changed also. You're going to be venting PVC pipe for a condensing type heater, or a non-condensing, you're going to be talking stainless steel venting. So we got a lot of things to look at when we're out here playing the job. It's not just slapping in a 40-gallon water heater.
Mike, is there also usually an electrical connection for controls and stuff like that?
The non-condensing models, there are a few of them that aren't using any kind of electric on them. The condensing models are draft induced, all that good stuff like that. So yes, you're going to have power. What size water heater are we going to need? What kind of features are we looking for? And is the customer okay with your plans? I mean, bottom line, they're thinking what they see on TV, that, you know, how much is this thing going to cost when you start talking the pricing on it. The main thing we got to look at is going to be what size water heater. How many gallons per minute do we actually have to have? And the main concern on any of this stuff is if we size for the bathrooms, everything else will take care of itself. A dishwasher is not meant much water usage. Washing machine and dryer, the washer's not much water usage. So we're looking at bathrooms. How many baths are in the house? How many showers are in the house? How many shower heads? Do we have body sprays? Do we have side sprays with each heater? How much are they using? Standard shower heads, a water-saving shower head is 2.5 gallons a minute. Unfortunately, the first time mom can't rinse her hair real well, or guys with longer hair or whatever, I've seen it entirely too many times that people go out and buy a water-saving shower head, and the very first thing they do is they pop the washer out of that restricts it to 2.5 gallons a minute, and now we got a 4 or 5 gallon a minute shower head. Do we have bathtubs in there? Typical house bathtub isn't bad, but when you start getting into some of these whirlpools or some of the soaking tubs like they talk about in here, we're talking about spouts on these things a lot of times that can be 10 to 12 gallon a minute flow rates to try and fill these things up. Is that a good use for a tankless water heater? No. Something like that's almost considered a dump load. You almost want to have a tank heater in there. Yeah.
Can I read your question here, Mike, from Scott? Scott writes in, what is the mixture of cold to hot water at what temperature to deliver 2.5 gallons per minute? How many gallons per minute are actually needed? I think you're trying to look at that ratio there.
They don't, usually most of the manufacturers don't worry about that. They just go by what the shower head is. And you'll notice I tell our guys, I've told our guys before, if you've got like a Moen shower, you know, with the big single handle in there, in the middle of the summertime, you're going to be over to the right-hand side a little bit, which means less hot, more cold. And as the water temperature starts dropping, you'll notice that all of a sudden you're starting to go over more hot, less cold, because the water mix is changing. They don't worry about, are we actually only using 1 3/4 gallon of hot water and 1 1/4 gallon of cold, because that mixture changes during the course of the year. What they're more concerned about is what the actual flow rate of the water heater is, or not the water heater, the shower head. We had a problem the other day. A lady was complaining that she couldn't take her half-hour showers that she was used to taking. Part of the reason was they had an old water heater and it was starting to get crudted up. But the other thing is she's been complaining about it for about the past year and a half, right after they redid their master bathroom. Well, guess what? Now she has a rain shower head on there that was almost 5 gallons a minute and 2 body sprays, and she had a total water draw for her half-hour showers of 11 gallons a minute. A tankless isn't going to do that. A tank heater would, but you'd have to have a fairly large tank heater. So back to what we were talking about, what kind of schedule do we have? If mom like to take showers at night and dad takes them in the morning to help wake up, when do the kids take showers? Are there kids? What are we doing at the same time? Would we have anything else going on at the same time? Do we have dishwashers, hot water heaters, or hot water laundry going on at the same time? And I included this bottom part in there. Where are we at? You know, the northern third United States, the Chicagoland area, we deal with 40-degree incoming water. We actually can get below that because water through the mains is moving, and we can actually get down below that, but we size for 40. We get down to, you know, California, Southwest, Texas, Florida, stuff like that. They deal with 60-degree incoming water. And that's typically, when we talk about these kind of water temperatures, we're talking worst case. We're talking in the summertime or in the wintertime. So we start looking at our peak demands, what we're going to actually have happening here. And we need to satisfy these peak requirements even the coldest time of the year. Another thing that I want to mention while we're talking about is because there's one of the things in here is typically tank manufacturers for years have talked about 40-degree incoming water and residentially a 90-degree temperature rise, which makes 130-degree water. Tankless manufacturers are all over the place, and they'll rate their tanks, no matter who it is, to whatever makes them look the best. So you see a lot of craziness where they'll say 42-degree incoming water, and they'll usually do a 115-degree outlet, maybe even a little bit less than that. So the 75 degrees, if you live in the upper Midwest, is going to give you 115-degree temperature rise. So the example I have down here is a Chicago homeowner. We're talking about a Delta T and a temperature rise of 75 degrees. So we're talking about 40-degree incoming water. We're doing 115 outlet. We don't have to worry about it in the summertime because the incoming water temperature is going to be quite a bit higher. So we size for those worst case applications. I'm going to have Ryan sit here and play with this for a second. We've got Bradford's website brought up here, and one of the first things we want to look at is we're looking at 40 degree. We're going to play by the rules that we just had on here. We're going to say 40-degree incoming water. We're going to say 115 out. And now let's just do test house. John J. Treehugger. Number of standard showers. If we do one standard shower and we say that's the only thing that's going to be going on at the same time, and we do actually have a water-saving shower head. If we go down to the bottom and we say, okay, maybe the dishwasher might be running while somebody's trying to take a shower, you click on this and tell it yes. It gives you a typical water flow. Who cares? We hit submit, and we're at 180,000 BTU heater. All right, let's resize the job. And now if we go in and say we have 2 showers and 2 at a time, and we'll still say they're water-saving shower heads. And let's say the same thing again about the dishwasher running. All right, we submit now, and oops, now we got 2 150,000 BTU water heaters in there to do the tankless job. It can get crazier from there. Let's go back. Let's say we have 1 shower that's got body sprays in it. No, body spray. And on use. Now, a lot of these body sprays, they're high-efficiency water shower heads and stuff are starting to mix more and more air in with them, so they act a little bit nicer. But let's say we have the one and going to be in use, and we have 2 sprays, 1 on each side. We're going to get about 6 gallons a minute out of both of those.
And there? You're saying 2?
No, 1.
1 body spray?
Yeah, 1 body spray. We're just telling it 6 gallons. And we're doing the same thing. We hit submit now.
Oh, so you're saying we have 2 3 gallons?
We have one, a fixture with 1, but we're just doubling up saying 3 on each one, so 6 gallons.
Okay.
Now we're at 3 150,000 BTU heaters. Doesn't take real long, and you can kind of see what I was saying about that lady with the 5 gallon a minute rain, rain shower head and the 2 body sprays, to where all of a sudden you're starting to use a lot of water. Okay? You can play around with these things. Whirlpools, I really don't like tankless water heaters. I'm sorry, tankless water heaters for anybody that's using any kind of Whirlpool, mainly because the spouts, the big Roman spouts or the big gooseneck spouts that come out and fill these things up, you're talking about maybe a 100-gallon tank or 100-gallon Whirlpool. And unless you want to take forever to fill it up, you're going to have, something like a 12 gallon a minute spout, and all of a sudden you're not going to be able to do it with a tankless. That's why I said before, it's almost like a dump load. You want to be able to fill it up. That means you're going to have a large tank heater down there to be able to do it. But
so playing with this, like if I have 2 showers going at the same time and they're both low water fixtures at 2.5, I can get away with 1 big ass heater.
199,000.
As soon as I go to a higher flow rate, though, then I'm gonna have to get multiples.
Yeah.
Scott also writes in, and Scott, just so you guys know, does a lot of water heaters, probably more than anybody I've ever met. He writes in, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but he writes in, if you properly calculate the GPM and use 2 to 3 tankless water heaters producing 9 to 12 GPM of 120 degree hot water, you will have very happy customers who will fill hot tubs and enjoy endless hot water.
Yes.
You're absolutely correct. I don't know if that was a positive or a negative statement, but if people want that, if people want that and they're willing to buy 2 or 3 heaters, fantastic, awesome. If they're only willing to buy 1 water heater, then probably got to go a different route. Scott also asks, what size tank will be required to run this for 20 minutes? You got to define what this is, because I don't know what I was clicking on when you wrote that question. So if you tell me what this is, we can guesstimate that too. This particular page is for tankless, but the same website has a tank sizer on it, does it not?
Yeah, there's a tank sizer in there too on Bradford's. That's what I say. If you kind of get familiar with whatever manufacturer, Bradford, because we do Bradford, and I'm used to their website. Over the course of time, I've done A.O. Smith, I've done Ring. They all have sizing programs in there. They usually lean on them pretty good. They don't want to get caught. But yeah, we can get into product sizing guide. We can do residential sizing, residential water heater sizing. They just start asking a few more questions. How many people, if they got a bathtub and stuff. They try and keep it real simple because they're going to do it. This is not an engineering program. This is to get you in and get you figured out about what you're going to have. They also do it for commercial. So I saw a lot of engineers, that are signed in on here too. They do actually do a lot of stuff for the engineering side.
Scott, to fake this out for the body spray example, I'm going to tell it 3 showers, basically 3 fixtures going at the same time. See if we can get it to simulate that. And here's some different choices that it would pop up with. But here's a 40-gallon, 40,000, 40-gallon, 40,000 BTU, 50, 40, 40, 40, 40, 38.
Yeah.
So a typical 40-gallon water heater should be able to handle it. You could probably go to some, I guess we just max it out. So 6 people with all the bathrooms. And it's going to push me into 50-gallon water heaters.
Yeah, you're going to start getting into 50, and you'll notice that it's also starting to go to 65,000 BTU units, stuff like that. There's one down in the bottom right-hand corner, if you can see the screen, that's Bradford came up with this heater a couple years ago, this GX series heater. The 25-gallon is gone now. It's still on here, and it's recommending it. I don't know why. But the GX series heaters, what they did is they took their light commercial version of the Icon gas valve, and they started doing this, and they send it with a mixing valve setup. So now what we can actually do is we can store at 180 degree water temperature in there, mix down to 115, 120 degrees, and get crazy amounts of first hour availability out of it.
All right, let's switch back over. All right.
All right. We'll talk about the Bosch, and one of the reasons why we like Bosch, and I just told, I don't know if there's anybody on here from Bradford White. I hope there isn't, because I'm going to let out a secret. Bradford White, for years, used Rinnai water heaters. They recently started dealing with Bosch, and the tankless water heaters that are going to be available from Bradford are going to be Bosch water heaters. So it's kind of nice for us because we're already familiar with the Bosch water heaters. One of the best things about the Bosch, there's a lot of things I liked about it, and one of the reasons why we kind of started dealing with them, is they do actually make something that's ASME rated because they take it to 225,000 BTU. If you see up in the upper right-hand corner, that little C, on their model designation, C means condensing. The 1210 is actually 12.1 gallons per minute at something really stupid temperature rise, nothing. Basically, if you're down in Florida and it's 100 degrees and the thing's out in the carport. But the C at the very end is the commercial version. So now Bosch has a 225,000 BTU with a 10-to-1 turn down. That's 94% thermal efficiency. We're dealing with a 42-degree temperature rise, and we can do 5.4 gallons per minute. We can set the temperatures on it anywhere from 100 to 140 degrees. We're venting with PVC. Also has the longest warranty out of any of the companies right now, with a 15-year warranty. The small version of it, the one that comes up most commonly, is the 199,000. That's probably one of the most common ones in everybody's brand. Once again, 10-to-1 turn down, 96% thermal efficiency, a 4.7 gallon per minute capacity. Same thing, vents PVC. The Bosch design, one of the things I really love about Bosch is because it's coming in, it's a European company and a European design. Over there, they have to have their water heaters inspected on a yearly basis. And these guys really like the fact that the design on these things are so well organized that they can get in there and they can service them and they can do everything else really easy. The display right on the front of the unit, is straightforward, does a little bit of troubleshooting and stuff. One of the main things I liked about this design when I saw it is the way they modulate their burner. They modulate across the whole burner up and down, and that's because they use their own heat exchanger. They use the dual fans, so they can actually low fire, high fire the whole heat exchanger. So we prevent hot spots. We just reduce the risk of corrosion. They use turbulators in there to help prevent scale buildup, stuff like that. Most of the other manufacturers, I'm not going to say every one of them because I don't know every one of them, but the way they stage their burner is from left to right. So on small water demands, and this is something Ryan and I have talked about before, first off, not only do you have to use more than half a gallon a minute to just get the thing to come on, but think about washing your hands for a couple seconds. You sit there, you turn it on, you wait for the hot water to get there because it's still not instantaneous at every faucet. The water gets there, starts warming up, you wash your hands, you turn it off, and you never went beyond that first firing stage because we're not using that much water. Over the course of time, the majority of your water usage is on these first two to the left. The only time you really see that far right firing is when somebody is taking a long shower or they're in the shower and they're using a lot of water. So what ends up happening in a lot of cases is we keep firing over and over and over on that first section of heat exchanger, no matter whose heat exchanger it is. So we're firing over and over on that first third to two-thirds of the heater. They use a copper on their primary, and then they have their own secondary heat exchanger that's made out of aluminum. They actually pick up about 10% more latent heat, maximizing the unit's efficiency. The Bosch control is kind of nice. They also make a remote control. I didn't bother even talking about it, but I guess I will. They actually have a remote control that you can sit there and change stuff. But right as of now, and as of when this was all done, they can actually control within 2 degrees, which is kind of nice. So, I mean, when you got older people in the house that are, can turn on the faucet full blast and stuff, you can change the risk of scalding down for kids and older people. They do currently have the best warranty on the market, 15-year warranty. Typically, most of the other manufacturers are doing 12-year warranties on them. That's kind of why we thought that, when we looked at everything, and I mean, we're already a Bradford distributor, why we decided to bring in the Bosch for our tankless heaters. One thing, watch the warranties. Most of the tankless manufacturers will have some sort of stipulation that can actually cut down on the warranty depending on how they're piped, whether they've got a recirc line on them, and whether they're being maintained properly. If they're not being flushed out and they're not being, normally they just run white vinegar through them. If they're not being cleaned, they can have problems with the warranty. It's not that unusual. A lot of guys see that with some of the boiler manufacturers on the high efficiency boilers. If they don't have yearly maintenance on them, it can affect the warranty. All right, now let's take a look at what we can do to make a tank style heater act more like a tankless. We all know, or we should know, that there are changes coming. April 16th is a drop dead date for manufacturers only. Anything that's non-compliant to the 2015 standards that we have in stock or that you have in stock are still going to be sellable. It's a cutoff date for the manufacturers that they have to meet these new energy factors that have been imposed. That's a whole nother half-hour webinar that we actually have online that you can go through and see what's going on. But simply, it's EFs are the energy factor. It's a formula. It's nothing scientific. They say this factor times this times the volume of the water heater. And that's how they come up with these EF ratings. So what's that mean that's going to be happening pretty soon is most of these new heaters that are going to be compliant, you're going to start seeing changes in mainly diameter, because we're going to go to 2 inches in insulation on the compliant water heaters versus the stuff that's out there now. Bradford, the M1 or MIs, the MI is a 1 inch insulation. Anything else is 2. The bad part about insulation is you get to the point of diminishing return. You go from 1 to 2, it makes a big difference. Go from 1 to 5, and it doesn't make that much more difference. The insulation just doesn't, after a certain point, you just can't do much more. You're also going to see some technical changes on some of the heaters, something that we're not going to talk about during this, but the heat pump water heaters for the replacement on some of the electric stuff. If we look at a typical Bradford compliant heater now, this is a picture of something that we actually have in stock. It's a compliant heater. The M440, 40,000 BTU, 43 gallons at a 90-degree temperature rise. And that's what I said. Remember, we were talking about how the tankless guys will play games a little bit with their ratings as what their outlet temperature is. Tank heaters, we're talking about 130-degree water temperature at the outlets. So Bradford, a couple years ago, went in conjunction with Honeywell and came up with this icon control. So we get a little bit better performance, and we get a little bit closer on our set points. We're not swinging as back and forth as wildly as the old standard White Rogers gas valves and stuff like that. So we're getting better performance, better control. We get some diagnostics on here. We have some pilot on indication, so we know that as long as the little green light's flashing, we've got a pilot. They use a regular power pile on them, not a thermocouple, because it's generating electricity. The gas valve is a repairable, replaceable parts. So we have a thermoplastic well that's actually inside the heater now, so we can change out the gas valve without having to drain the tank. But the last thing that's on the page for these things is that it's compatible with optional accessory packages, the performance package, the protection package, and the inlet shutoff. So these are the things that can help make it act a little bit more like a tankless. So the accessory packages, the first thing you would have would be the accessory module. The accessory module has to be powered, so you have to have some power local, to get over to the transformer. The transformer comes with it. The control module comes with it. We can sit there. It has an alarm, so if we have any alarm conditions that happen, it'll actually sound off. Sounds like a smoke detector type alarm. Mute button on the front after somebody actually goes down there and takes a look at it. So the module is the first thing that you have to put on there. So now we can actually do some leak protection. They have a little sensor. If you look at that little L-shaped thing over in the bottom right-hand side, that's the actual sensor. It screws to the tank, goes into either the bottom of a pan, if you have a pan. Condo associations, apartment buildings where you have water heaters on upper floors, this is a no-brainer to stop having problems where you have a water leak. But we're going to sense if there's water in the pan. If you don't have a pan, they actually give you a little rubber dam to put around the water heater to contain the water, so the sensor will sense it. It will sound an alarm. It will let you know that there's water happening down in the basement or in by the water heater. So it's mounted in the drain pan or whatever. As soon as if it could be a condensation problem, it could be a relief valve blowing off and getting into the pan, not something that normally would go on. You can reset it and the alarm shuts off. If you have a real life situation where once again, condos and apartment buildings and stuff like that, where you're concerned about damage to other floors, we actually have a shutoff valve set up for them that operates off that same module. So now we can sense the water on the floor or in the pan, and we can actually shut down the incoming water of the water heater. Or the part that I've got highlighted mounts directly to the water heater because they actually give you 1 3/4 bushings on it, because you can use it on the light commercial stuff too, or any point upstream of the water heater. You could put this thing up, up on your main water piping coming in and be able to shut it down. So if somebody's not at home and there's nobody there to hear the alarm, so we want to be able to shut off the water, not just sound an alarm. The performance package, this is the fun part. It actually has a Honeywell 7-day 4-program setback thermostat that comes with the part of the package. So now we can sit there and say, okay, at 10:30 at night, everybody's done taking showers. We can actually set the temperature down in the tank. We can actually set it down to 70 to 80 degree water temperature. First thing in the morning, you're the first one up. You're up at 5:30. At 5 o'clock, you can have it come back up to temperature again. If everybody's out of the house by 9, you can actually have it set back down again until the first person comes home at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we can actually, just like, I hate to say that because I got it highlighted down there, you can save up to 36%. I mean, you can do that. It operates just like a setback thermostat for your house. Okay, so we can save off of that. So, okay, now we don't have to heat all that water all the time. Sound familiar? That's one of the biggest things about tankless water heaters. We're not heating the water all the time. All right, the second part of the performance package is an actual integrated mixing device. It goes from the supply to the return. Will now allow us to store at the highest temperature that the water heater will allow, and we can mix down to 120 degrees or 115 degrees. We can blend that water in it because we're now blending in a higher temperature in the storage tank down to 115 degree water, so we can kind of keep things kosher and the same as the tankless. Okay, we can actually pick up to 50% more available hot water out of this heater. So now we're going to be sitting there storing at a higher temperature, but we're going to be mixing it down right at the heater. The mixing valve also has a couple nice features. It's got some extra taps on it to where you can bring a recirculation line in directly into it. It's got taps on it to go to a dishwasher. It's got taps on it to go to, other stuff. But the main thing is it's going to be sitting there and being able to blend it down by using some of the cold water. That 50-gallon, the GX heater that I was talking to was like a 200-gallon first hour availability out of a 78,000 BTU heater, 50-gallon tank, because it comes with this mixing valve. So now we can even get more hot water, and we can get up to 50% more. So that kind of sounds familiar about we can get a lot more hot water out of these heaters. If we look at a larger heater, like somebody that maybe has a dump load like we were talking about, has a whirlpool and they actually use it, or a soaking tub that might have 140 degrees, we can actually, because they use that icon gas valve on some of their larger heaters and their light commercial heaters, we can take a look at a 75-gallon heater, and this is going to be a compliant heater. 76,000 BTU, 82 gallons per minute at a 90-degree temperature rise again. So we're talking, now we can have a 40-gallon water heater that can actually get us about 64.5 gallons per hour. And we can get a 75 that can get us about 123 gallons per hour. So dollars and cents, okay, now we've got to start figuring out what's going to be the best way to do it. At standard 40-gallon water heater, and these are our current pricing, is water heater, 40-gallon water heater is $369. The control module, none of this stuff is outrageously expensive, $73. The leak sensor is $49. The shutoff valve is $95. $172 for the setback thermostat and the mixing valve. So we'd have a 40-gallon water heater that's $758. If we go to a 75-gallon, now we're talking $1,125 versus the tankless heaters, the C1210, the 225,000 BTU. The only real accessory that you want to have with this thing is going to be the isolation kit that comes with the relief valve. It's $102. So on the 225,000, we're looking at $1,984. On the 199,000, we're looking at $1,826. So let's start adding things up. We're looking at a 75-gallon with all the accessories at $1,125. Installation cost, depending on what's got to be moved, how it's got to be moved, because we are doing, talking tank for tank on something like this. We're talking probably around $350 to $650. So total approximate cost could be anywhere from $1,475 to $1,775 plus any markup that you guys put on the stuff. The tankless heater, if we use the 225,000 BTU as the example, we're at $1,984. Installation cost, depending on how far you got to move, what you got to do on the gas line, everything else could run anywhere from $700 to $1,300. So we're talking $2,684 to $3,284 plus any markup you have. And this is all, this part of it is all really kind of wide ranges. I mean, historically, everybody has kind of looked at tankless water heaters and said, okay, the installation on a tankless water heater could run anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 depending on what you're actually doing. So this is kind of goes along with that. Bradford, and I'm going to just go through this last little bit real quick. Bradford did their own test because they can. They actually did, the hypothesis of the whole thing was Department of Energy, the way they test water heaters, they draw off X number of gallons, they let it sit for 15 minutes, they draw off X number of gallons. They have their own way of testing. What they did, what Bradford did is they kind of wanted to do a little bit more like a typical house would do. So with the popularity of the tankless water heaters, they started going in and they said, okay, we're going to do a comparison test on 2 tank heaters, 2 tankless heaters. And I apologize because this is kind of hard to read, but the first one is a standard MI40, which is the regular water heater. The M440 is the one we used in an example. The tankless number 1 is a non-condensing 117,000 BTU, and the tankless 2 is a condensing model unit. So if you sit here and you look at some of this stuff, and they have the first 2 weeks, the second 2 weeks, third 2 weeks, they ran it over a period of time so they could get a little bit different incoming water temperatures so they could average it out. But you're looking at an average, annual operating cost at $338 on a standard 40-gallon water heater that you can buy today that's 0.59 efficiency. If you go to the step up to an M440, we're looking at $328. If we go to that non-condensing small style 117,000 BTU tankless model, we're at $320. If we go to the tankless version, I think the tankless they used was 180,000. We're looking at a total of $288. So that one of those very first slides we talked about the tankless companies were all talking about how you can save about $80 a year. Kind of shows that in the real world, that's not necessarily what's going to be happening. Here's the examples I was talking about, the insulation, the way they tested it. They did have to include, because the tankless number 2 was spark ignition and vent or power vented and all that stuff like that. They had to figure in electrical use too. So they tested this based on like a normal family of 4 in a 2,100 2-bedroom house. They took in the consideration the water draws that would be for whirlpools and master baths. The testing reflected that the standard peak hour demands. For years, if any of you guys are familiar with like commercial water heater sizing, we always figured you got a 2 to 3 hour window in the morning, 2 to 3 hour window in the evening that are your peak demand times, when everybody's taking showers, everybody's washing dishes, stuff like that. So they did the same kind of thing. So the overall test conditions were set to mimic what people normally do, as opposed to the typical Department of Energy stuff. So yes, they can save more money. Tankless can save more money. The efficiency differences are a little bit greater when you start getting into a larger usage and stuff like that, where you do have that O'Leary family of 7 taking 20-minute showers. But so bottom line, what's the best application for a tankless model? Long continuous hot water usage. When you start seeing those little on, off, wash your hands type stuff, you're not really even firing the heater, which is unfortunately, but you have problems with stuff like that. So after we've done all this talking, what's the best, tank or tankless? Okay, if you've done all your homework and really sat down with your customer and explained the limitations that, tankless can't make unlimited amount of water. They can make a limited amount of water for an unlimited amount of time. So after you explain these limitations, right, you're going to be the one that's going to have to sit down and make the decision with your customer. So that's it. There's no such thing as good. There's no such thing as bad. It's all about setting the expectations and doing what you have to do. Any questions more hiding in here? Anything? Beep. There's my beautiful, bright, smiling face again. Write that number down. If you have questions, that's my cell number. I have it with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So all of you can scribble that down right now and give me a buzz if you got anything crazy you want to talk about.
All right, there are several unanswered topics, and I'll try to summarize them because a lot of them are similar. One of the questions is about costs to replace perhaps 2 or 3 tank-style water heaters in the same time one tankless might be working. So, for example, if 20 years of the time span, you have 1 tankless versus having 2 tank heaters in that time span.
Right. And one of the things that and actually Ryan and I were talking about it before the class started, so I thought we talked about it. All those accessories that I was talking about that go along, the module, all that stuff like that can transfer from one heater to another as long as they're still using the Icon system. That's the whole thing. It's Bradford, so they're using the Icon valve. So actually, if you maintain a tank heater, and nobody does, God forbid, I don't, and I know I should. Nobody maintains.
Just for the record, I maintain mine. I'm just going to say. It's 13 years and going strong. So
I do know somebody that had a commercial water heater and a 12 flat, and this guy was just absolutely crazy about it. Twice a year, he went downstairs and he would drain the heater. He would open the clean out. He would get in there and clean out the lime, sediment, any buildup that had happened over the 6 months. He had a stack of gaskets on his workbench. He had a 100-gallon, 199,000 BTU commercial water heater that lasted him 20 years. So maintenance on a tank heater can be very important. If you go in there and you just flush out a couple times, every 3 or 4 months, you flush out a regular standard water heater, you can extend its life quite a bit. The typical warranty on these things on a standard heater is going to be a 6-year warranty. There are 10s, you can go to a 10-year warranty, but the thing is, they know that because nobody maintains the things. That as opposed to a tankless where you really do have to maintain them, just like anything else because of the water passages and scale buildup and stuff like that. A tank heater, it just changes and becomes less efficient because the scale piles up in the bottom unless you do something about it. Tankless heaters, you go in there with white vinegar, a 5-gallon bucket, a garden hose, and the installation kit. You just pump it through there and you just keep flushing it through until you get it cleaned out. So yes, you could replace, if you figure the slide that we have up now, the $758 for the total expense on a 40-gallon water heater, 6, 7, 8 years from now, if you maintain it a little bit, you keep the accessories, transfer them over to another heater that by that time will probably be $400. Yes, you could replace a tank water heater probably 3 times easily for the cost of the tankless heater.
Now, that being said, the reason most tank water heaters fail is typically multiple things, right? So a tank water heater, if you're not familiar, is basically a steel drum with a glass lining on the inside of it. The glass lining is to protect the steel from the corrosive components of the water. What ends up happening is eventually that glass will crack because something happened, somebody hit it, whatever, and water gets in and starts touching the metal side of the tank. There's an anode rod that goes down inside that tank. He's the sacrificial lamb. His job is to die so your tank doesn't die. People don't, when they're servicing it, they don't check that rod either, and they don't change that rod out. It's a very common issue as well.
One of the other things, and Ryan was saying, if sediment starts building up on the bottom of the tank, remember my joke about heating the bucket of water on the other side of a brick wall? That sediment down there, now we're firing underneath that tank for a longer period of time to get the temperature up. We get more expansion, more contraction on the bottom shell of that tank. And now we've got that glass lining in there. So what ends up happening most of the time is we start expanding, contracting over the course of time because we're firing through all that sediment, and we start loosening it at the welds in the bottom of the tank. And that's where we start cracking our insulation, or not insulation, the ceramic coating that's in there. And that's where we start getting the water into the tank and start killing the tank.
The other thing is we are comparing here kind of an entry-level type 40, 50 gallon water heater that's not necessarily a condensing tank water heater, and it's not necessarily, you know, high-end materials. We have other lines of water heaters we use here that are condensing tank water heaters that have stainless steel tanks with, you know, copper nickel, you know, heat exchangers and stuff like that. Yeah. So we're comparing the two most extreme examples today, which is entry-level tank versus a tankless. We have plenty of tank water heaters that have all the same bells and whistles and features as a tankless, meaning high efficiency, condensing, longer lasting heat exchanger materials. We have that in a tank version as well.
HTP.
Of course, you're going to get the tankless type price levels then when you get that, right? So you'll be in the $1,500 to $2,000 range for those. But if you want the storage capacity and you want the materials of the tankless, you can get both. It's not an either or thing. We're trying to make two extremes today just for the fun of having the boxing match, but there's lots of hybrids in between. Anybody have any other questions they want to type in, or we've answered most of them, I believe? All right, we'll hang out online here for another minute or two, and if there's no more questions, then we'll go ahead and shut things down. We thank you guys for your time, and we appreciate it.